Brandon Root, Dispatch Manager.
Mike Candace, Director of Fleet Services.
Mark Strela, Director of Custodial Services.
Amanda Perazio, Chief Human Resources Officer.
Jen Christensen, Director of Labor Relations. Peter, Director of Resources and Users. Samantha Holly, Director of Regularity.
Jessica Dayton, Director of Special Education.
Tanya Lopez, Director of Professional Learning. Nikki Saunders, Health Tech.
Sarah Smith, Preschool.
Senator Kashu, Food Service Worker and Trust Fund President.
All right, thank you all for that. The agenda that we finalized at our last session had the district having some proposals for articles, and a caucus, and JESPA having some proposals, some articles, caucus, question and answer, and joint communication. Are there any changes to that agenda? We'll say that we do have a minor one. We talked about possibly 14 and 16. We're absolutely bringing 14. And our committee that we have for professional development is actually going to present that. So that caucus is going to be really good to make sure they get here. And we are not going to be able to bring Article 6 this time. So I wanted to clarify on those expectations. So if it's possible, so one. And modify the agenda to reflect such. And then also either before or after joint communication, agenda settings. Pleased to be in the boardroom because it's familiar. 4D would have been a little tricky. So however that happened, thank you. Thank you, Professional Learning Department, for canceling today's learning. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda for how those articles will be presented.
Thank you. So this afternoon, the district has prepared red lines, proposed language for Articles 4, 16, and then a new safety and security article, which we numbered 17. However, we acknowledge that that could change. Specifically to the safety and security department, not to be confused with safety of employees in general, which we acknowledge that was an interest that you had shared. This one is specific to the department employees. So Article 4 is our first proposal, and it is up on the screen. This article was previously called work assignments. We would like to recommend that we modify the name of it to be all-encompassing of staffing, hiring, and work assignments. And that's our very first change. Sorry, I am reading this from my screen. I'm going to make sure I can figure. Okay, so Jen is navigating for us. So Article 4-1, we would like to suggest in these first sections some streamlined language, shifting some things around. There's not a lot of different language, but potentially it's in a different order and a little bit easier to follow. For example, previously there was a list of things and we've bulleted those now. So for position advertising, we have proposed the following language. The district will post all new or existing non-temporary vacant positions. Generally, vacancies will be advertised internally and externally to attract a diverse pool of qualified candidates and provide current employees opportunities for career advancement or change. HR will provide JESPA with regular updates on current postings to ensure timely communication of job openings. Double period, just for fun, for the next bit. Sorry about that. In 4.1.2, job postings will follow a standardized template in compliance with the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act and the current hiring handbook. Jobs will be posted for a minimum of 5 work days and will include the following information. This is where it used to have just a list and we just bulleted it instead for ease of reading. Position title, department and specific location when appropriate. Assignment level, elementary, middle, high school, etc., if applicable. Closing date, number of hours / FTE, pay grade and wage, job description, and benefits. The district may post pooled positions to address roles with high turnover or a consistent need for recruitment. And just for everyone's understanding who may be watching and unfamiliar with this, oftentimes that occurs with transportation. We need to post a driver position. We might post that as a pooled position to ensure we are attracting as many candidates as we can. And oftentimes that remains posted to be able to continue seeking applicants for this high needs role that we have trouble filling. So everything that was there previously has been redlined because it was restated above in a different order. In 4.2, which is changes in work location, beginning with 4.2.1, the district may administratively transfer employees into vacant positions without adhering to posting procedures. However, administrative transfers may not be used for promotions or demotions. If an employee is interested in a lateral move or promotional opportunity, they must apply for the position in accordance with this article and be selected through the competitive process. In 4.2.3, in cases of an ongoing involuntary transfer, the affected employee will be notified by the appropriate administrator of the proposed transfer and reason for it with at least 2 weeks notice. That was current language. And Human Resources will also inform the JESPA of this transfer. When multiple vacancies are filled through administrative transfers, the administrator overseeing the transfers must solicit employee preferences for location. If multiple employees are affected, preferences will be considered based on seniority. Again, this was previous language just reworded a little bit for clarity. If the JESPA determines the reasons for an administrative transfer violate this agreement, they may file agreements under procedures outlined in Article 12. Under 4-3, the application process. Employees who wish to seek other job opportunities must apply for open positions on the JEFCO job board and in accordance with this article. In 4.3.2, if an employee is screened out of consideration, the hiring manager will notify the employee prior to conducting interviews. And this was previous language just restated a little bit for clarity, and also making sure that the hiring manager owns that responsibility since they are the hiring manager. In 4.3.3, all active employees except those on administrative, investigative, or discipline-related leave are eligible to apply for positions within the district. Under pre-screening and selection process, this used to just be called a selection process. We expanded it because it's not just about the interview and selection, but also about what happens before the interview leading up to identifying the candidates who are eligible for interview, who meet the requirements, etc. So in 4.4.1, the hiring manager will be identified in the record for every hiring folder. This is new language. We understand that there have been potentially times where the hiring manager was not identified. And so we just want to put that in the language that that is an expectation that that person is identified. Selection committees must be comprised of, just a quick clarification of language, comprised of at least 3 members, one of which is a JESPA eligible employee, not to be confused as a JESPA member, meaning a dues paying member. We just wanted to make sure that we didn't intend to, I don't think you either, we intended to restrict it to solely a dues paying member, is a JESPA eligible employee as defined in Article 1. Hiring managers will provide committee members with appropriate portions of the staffing guide, meaning those that are relevant for interviewing, for review, which includes the process and training materials. The hiring manager with input from the selection committee will determine the tools that will be used for pre-screening and final selection process. The tools may include, but are not limited to, and we included all of the things that were previously there: resumes, interviews, written tests, practical tests, work simulations, reference checks. We included current corrective action and other generally accepted job appropriate selection tools. The selection committee will predetermine the number of applicants to interview. The agreed upon pre-screening tools will be applied equitably to all applicants to identify the top candidates for interviews. And that was kind of restating what those two previously stated with the exception of 4431. The evaluation or discipline, we did include that the hiring managers may need to review corrective action prior to interviewing a candidate or selecting them for an interview. In 444, the most of this is the same as it was previously. We did add in the word against the collaboratively developed selection criteria, just rewording that. Also, just for clarification, the final recommendation to the hiring manager in this section, we understood that to be the final recommendation of the candidate they choose to hire. And the reason I wanted to clarify that is because on letter D of 444, a reference check conducted by the hiring manager, best practice in talent acquisition is to conduct that reference check after the interviews so as to not communicate with a supervisor that an employee is seeking a different location or job elsewhere when potentially they have not notified their supervisor yet. Certainly we can encourage that, but we want the employee or the individual to be able to do that and not the hiring manager to help the employee until they are determined to be a finalist or the finalist candidate. So just for reference on that particular section. Final recommendation of the selection committee will be made with a numeric point-based matrix. We left all of that first section in there and then modified the second half of 445. The hiring manager will consider the selection committee's recommendation when making a hiring decision. If the hiring manager rejects the recommendation, the reason must be documented and reviewed by HR. And that language again was there. We just combined two different things into one. In 446, we modified this slightly. I'm trying to figure out why this language literally looks identical. So assuming that we struck the language, assuming there is no compelling difference between top applicants, internal candidates will be the preferred choice over an external candidate. We struck that. As you're aware, we should be hiring the best candidate for the job every single time based on the criteria determined by the selection committee. We left the rest of the language, assuming there's no compelling difference between only internal applicants. The final selection will be based on the greatest amount of continuous job-related service in the district. In 447, the hiring manager will notify candidates not selected through the interview process after the finalist has accepted the position, but before the selection is announced. So we wanted to be really clear here. There was a missing component. The other candidates should not be called until the finalist has accepted, because if the finalist says, actually, I've reconsidered and don't want this job, then we need to make sure that we have the other candidates available as a potential second place rate candidate as well. And so, but we do understand that notifying them before the selection is announced is positive action. Upon request, employees will receive feedback on why they were not selected and guidance on improving future applications. And if you are an applicant out there, I would always encourage you to request. In 448 and 449, this is additional language that we've added for proposal. The district reserves the right to adjust its hiring processes to ensure the safety and integrity of its operations while adhering to applicable policies and laws. These processes are supplemental to and may differ from general hiring processes outlined in this article. So just for reference, every once in a while, there is modification that needs to happen in a specific hiring practice. For example, our safety and security team, because of the nature of their work and the access to some of the information that they have on external databases such as background check type information, their processes for reviewing candidates may be a little bit more extensive than what a typical job related field might be. In 449, a procedural or technical violation of this article's terms will not invalidate, reverse, or undo the hiring process or decision made under it. The parties agree that the purpose of this article is to uphold the integrity of the process, and minor errors will not be considered a breach of its overall objectives. Certainly, our hope is that we can address some of the concerns that have come up from JESPA and from even the district in reviewing hiring folders through training and not through punishment of employees who do get hired and then potentially having to undo that hiring because of a poor practice by the hiring manager. Our talent acquisition team, just for reference, is already working on hiring training for hiring managers across all of our district departments. They've already trained principals, elementary, middle, and high school, and intend to train central services hiring managers as well to begin working through doing things in alignment with the expectations and also in alignment with best practice in hiring. Okay, 4-5, the probationary period. We have made some modifications to this particular section as well. Newly hired employees, those hired into a new position, and newly promoted employees will be considered probationary until they have completed 180 working days in their respective position. We believe that we should give people a longer amount of time to become comfortable in their position and know that it is both right for them and right for the department or school in such case that they are working for. We have struck the previous or the next language regarding in-person orientation with the intent to move that to Article 2, where other information about orientation lives. In Article 452, at the end of the probationary period, if the employee supervisor determines their performance is satisfactory, the employee will transition out of probationary status. Is rephrased language that already existed. In 453, at the end of the probationary period, if the employee's supervisor determines their performance is less than satisfactory, the employee's probationary period may be extended up to an additional 60 additional working days to demonstrate satisfactory performance. That was the current language, the 60-day additional probationary period time. In 454, if a promoted employee's performance is not satisfactory within the first 180 days of their new position, the employee may be promoted to an available position with a pay rate equal to that which they held prior to their promotion. Not everybody, after a while, people might realize that they were not meant to be in a lead role. They themselves might not feel that as though that is appropriate for themselves, and their supervisor may feel as though that was not an appropriate promotion. So we want to make sure that we have the opportunity, both the employee's choice and the district's ability to put the person back into a position where they are better suited. And then a sub-component of that one, the assignment will continue until a vacancy arises that matches the employee's pre-promotion position. At that time, the employee will be administratively transferred into the vacant position. Okay, in 4-6, we just reworded this language. Instead of it saying unrelated to their job descriptions, we put employees shall not be assigned duties that fall outside the scope of their job description. In 462, when changes are made to an employee's written job description, the employee will be notified by the district or direct supervisor by the copy of the job description in full face of the changes to the required duties. The association will be provided an updated job description when changes are made. In 463, if changes to an employee's job description require additional training The district will provide the necessary training before the new job functions are used in the employee's evaluation. In Article 464, we took out the reference to Article 6-8 and just referenced Article 6. This happens often in agreements. I've realized over the past few years, if we reference a very specific subsection of an article, it is very likely that that will change in the future. And so we have just been trying to refer back to the article as a whole instead of that specific subsection. In 465, this is about lead positions. So we left the initial language, which is the example of different lead positions that we included will have additional responsibilities beyond their normal duties. These responsibilities include assigning tasks, evaluating staff, and assisting with the appropriate supervisor in grievance resolution when directly involved. Lead employees may also be required to make recommendations regarding employee selection and discipline. This agreement and the additional responsibilities do not remove these employees from the bargaining unit. Jumping down to 475, this is in the section called maintaining qualifications. In 475, we clarified some language. If an employee fails to secure the requisite job qualifications within the 30-day grace period, which is referenced above, the employee may be disqualified from their position and either reassigned, demoted, or terminated with rehirable status. Under pilot program assignments, after notification, the district declared pilot program positions will be posted within the department. The general specifics, including but not limited to all of these things, will be included in the posting. I believe that is all of the four proposals. I did want to reference something really quickly that I forgot to state. One of our reasons that we have made a proposal to increase the probationary period from 90 days rather to 180 days is the fact that our licensed employees, as you may or may not be aware, actually have a 3-year probationary period in order to demonstrate proficiency. And although we do believe that the 90%, maybe even higher, of our educational support professionals are very high quality and are able to demonstrate that very quickly, we do feel like giving them that extended time period allows them to even more so become comfortable in their position and able to demonstrate a high level of proficiency with that which they are assigned and have acquired through job application. So, let's go right to 16, or would you prefer that we pause and answer questions on Article 4?
So we have some notes jotted down, but maybe at caucus, we could refine those questions rather than blurting out and talking over. So after caucus, I think we definitely have some questions to bring back.
Great, thank you. So Katie is going to present Article 16, which is our food and nutrition services article.
That's better. All right, Article 16, food service. So this first section, 16-1, was professional development. We have proposed moving it to the article that actually addresses professional development. So this is language that we will address at that point, which makes 16-2 the new 16-1, no changes there. 16-3, we redlined through this. This is the portion that relates to developing and maintaining appropriate communications and education materials for students and families. This information, very important to share with families, very important to have up there. We just didn't feel like it belonged in the collective bargaining agreement because it's not labor related. It's related to families and students. So we struck through that language. 16-2, FNS staff will be available to support school community events, including but not limited to back to school night and other informational meetings. Any additional hours worked at such events by FNS employees will be paid. We just reworked this a little bit to change the communication piece of it. We do already communicate with school leadership about the availability of FNS staff. We have principal meetings every year. And so we just kind of reworded it to make a little bit more sense. No changes to what would now be 16-3 related to meal equivalents in the various site levels. Down to 16-5, we struck through MAQ thresholds being reviewed annually in negotiations. This was added several years back, and up to this point, we have not reviewed them. And so we feel like if one side wanted to bring this forward and talk about it, negotiate it, it would certainly be open and available to do so. So putting it in there as an annual requirement seemed unnecessary. We struck through that. What is now 16-4 the MEQ. The only changes here were just meals per day being changed to MEQs for consistency purposes. I did the same down there in 16-6. And then in what would then become 16-6-3, in the event of a decrease in the MEQ served during the school year under the threshold for a site classification as per 16-4-1-1 through 6, the incumbent will remain in the same position grade until the following school year, including receiving any step or cost of living adjustment offered. Beginning with the August 15th pay cycle of the following school year, the incumbent will be moved to the appropriate site classification based on the MEQ served the prior school year. And just a little bit of historical background on the why here. Previously to using meal equivalents, managers were paid according to whether they managed a elementary school or a secondary school, which led to quite a bit of inequity. We would have folks at secondary programs who were being paid more money than their counterparts at elementary schools simply because of the classification, when the elementary school may have been serving quite a few more kids or had greater participation. So we moved to this MEQ model for equity purposes. And over these last few years, we've kind of gotten back to this place where, for whatever reason, we've had people move up in greater participation, but then have seen a dip in their participation, and so they're no longer serving those higher meal equivalents like some of their colleagues are. And so we've reached another place of inequity. And so we just wanted to bring it back to being a little bit more equitable, making sure everyone's being paid fairly. And then finally in 16-6, that last one is just, I just added the end for consistency purposes, so it didn't say this.
We're ready. We have our final language proposal that we were scheduled to bring today. And we again have labeled it Article 17, although we're open for that to be modified. It is a safety and security article. And Brandon is going to present that one.
Thank you. So Article 17, the Department of School Safety. 17.1 will be the hiring provisions. 17.1-1 will be armed patrol officers, campus security coordinators, and dispatchers of the Department of School Safety are entrusted with access to sensitive information via CGIS, the Criminal Justice Information System, NCIC, National Crime Information Center, and CCIC, the Colorado Crime Information Center. As such, the district reserves the right to adjust its hiring processes to ensure the safety and integrity of its operations while adhering to the policies and laws. These processes are supplemental to and may differ from the general hiring practices outlined in Article 4. 17.2 will become maintaining qualifications. 17.2-1, employees are responsible for maintaining all requisite certifications, licenses, and qualifications pertinent to their job roles as outlined in Article 4 of this agreement. 17.2-1-1, armed employees are required to recertify their range of PPCT qualifications and will not be granted the same 30-day grace period as outlined in Article 4. As training time and space for these qualifications is limited, failure to meet these deadlines may result in immediate reassignment, demotion, or termination. A little clarity on that piece of it. We have, we outsource this specific training based on the nature of the training, and so we're at the will of both those trainers and funding for that piece of it. So 17.2-1-2, armed employees must successfully qualify to carry their firearm quarterly. Failure to qualify after 3 consecutive attempts conducted on 2 separate occasions will disqualify the employee from remaining armed, which may result in immediate reassignment, demotion, or termination. 17.2-2, all armed personnel, campus security coordinators, and dispatchers shall undergo an annual review, including driver's license query and background check, to ensure compliance with the standards required for access to NCIC, CCIC, and CJIS. Maintaining access to these sensitive systems is a condition of continued employment if an employee is flagged or if their access to these systems is restricted or revoked. Their employment status shall be subject to review, which may result in immediate reassignment, demotion, or termination. As a side note to that, just for information as well, this is a requirement to maintain the access to those systems. So we have to maintain, obviously, a district standard, but we also have to maintain the standard that lives within CJIS as well. 17-3, employee misconduct. 17.3.1, all employees in the Department of School Safety with direct access to CJIS, NCIC, and CCIC are held to stringent standards regarding the use of these systems. Any intentional or unintentional misuse or abuse of access to these systems, which results in the loss or removal of access, may lead to immediate reassignment, demotion, or termination. 17.3-1-1, if an employee's access to these systems is suspended, they will be placed on paid administrative leave until access is restored. Suspension of access will expose the employee to disciplinary action as established in Article 10. If access is not restored within a reasonable time frame, the employee's continued employment status will be subject to review, which may include reassignment, demotion, or termination. 17-3-2, misuse of a firearm, including during training, whether intentional or negligent, will be subject to review by the district. The executive director or their designee reserves the right to assess each situation on a case-by-case basis. Based on the results of this review and in consultation with the district, disciplinary action may be taken up to and including reassignment, demotion, or termination. And as with before, if there's any questions.
The proposal for an Article 17, safety and security. Rather, the Department of School Safety. Sorry, I should read it with the appropriate head.
So this is gonna take some deep questions. We have a bunch in our chat. What I was thinking is maybe we could present our Article 3, so you have something to look at while we caucus. You're not just waiting for us to come back. We won't do 15 and 14 yet, just 3 to get something out there.
Sounds good.
So I know I'm jacking with the agenda once again. But based on what you've presented, we'd like to change. we had discussed. Did we discuss in the last session having the multi-year agreement, or is this all news to everyone listening? I know you and I, Amanda, talked about it. I don't remember if we talked about it. For everyone's codification.
I think it was potentially part of the interest and potential solutions that you had shared. So if everyone remembers back 4 sessions ago, they may have recalled that.
Excellent, which is why I wanted to readdress this. So, again, so a negotiated agreement lasts a number of years. In previous years, we had come back to the table every year for 2 ideas in addition to benefits, compensation, the whole bit. So what we're doing here is, again, another 6-year agreement. So just changing the dates from 19 to 25 and 25 to 31. And then talking about this article as opposed to, again, the Article 3-2, because all those numbers are going to change again for clarity, similar to what you had done. And again, the JESPA is throughout. We just prefer JESPA. That's fine. And then scrolling down. New language. And this is already in there. It was in 3-2-3. We're moving it up to the top of conduct negotiations again for clarity. The board, through its designated representatives, shall meet with the representatives of JESPA and shall negotiate for the purposes of modifying the agreement. Again, same verbiage that was before. We're just moving it to the top. Changing, then inserting, including those pertaining to compensation, striking benefits, adding and other terms and conditions of employment subject to negotiations, and striking out the each year of the agreement to at regular intervals as specified herein. The district and JESPA will engage in ongoing negotiations that may include, again, same verbiage, and adding down at the bottom, instead of striking out and sick leave payout, keeping the sick leave payout, adding workplace safety measures, professional development, job security provisions, and other matters regarding ESP working conditions. Again, that's just similar language to what's already in the preamble. We're just putting it in 3-2. What was 3-2? Struck brought above. Reopeners. In addition to compensation and benefits in 2028, so 3 years from now. So for it's a term, instead of 2 items of their choosing, then 3 items of their choosing. Keeping the size of the team similar. The negotiations timeline, beginning of the school year is hectic for all. So changing the negotiation dates instead of by September 15th, changing that to October 15th, giving us a little breathing room. That us was a collective, all of us. So with this keeping, instead of remembering to write a successor agreement, striking through that language and changing to negotiations for successor agreement shall commence automatically. Instead of having to make sure that's done in a timeline, just heads up, we're all in agreement. It just happens. And moving down in 3-2-6, written procedures for negotiations instead of in advance of, having it be at the first public bargaining session because that is part, again, of law. So I know there has been confusion about that in years past. Let's clear it up. And then 3-2-7, the parties agree to engage in negotiations using a traditional bargaining model. Again, this is at the request of the superintendent. Questions came about. What is it? How do we want to do it? States it very clearly here through a traditional bargaining model. The model will involve direct exchange of red line proposals and counter proposals that clearly delineate each party's changes to contract language. Just trying to describe what we believe traditional bargaining model to be. So further for clarity again there. Striking through. That's okay. Just striking through the exchange, keeping the will present relevant data, interests, and solutions. Further in 3-3-2, following ratification. Sorry, it looks like that's a. Never mind, sorry. Purple and black, I'm gonna turn and go this way. Any modifications instead of the master agreement, just clarifying language, the collective bargaining agreement. That's also through here. Adding new language here, within 30 days of ratification of the agreement by both parties, the district shall have copies of the agreement prepared in English and Spanish and deliver them to the association for distribution to each bargaining unit member in the district. And this aligns with what others are doing throughout the nation. The district shall also provide a copy of the agreement to new bargaining unit members at hires during the term of the agreement. Both parties shall be provided with and maintain an electronic copy of the agreement in both languages. Here at the bottom of fact finding, if there are unresolved issues after fact finding, the parties will revert to status quo. Striking through the board will decide the unresolved issues. Striking through the time, now we're on maintenance of status quo, striking through the time at the beginning, just saying the terms and provisions of this agreement shall remain in full force and effect until the parties enter into a successor agreement. And striking through the impasse resolution. Acting. So believing in that positive intent that we have this year, carrying it through. Questions? Or should we caucus and then bring back? All right, so as the clock on the wall is showing me, it's 12:50. I'm thinking we need at least 45 minutes. And the PD committee will get here to present that. So I would say just 2 o'clock. Unless we need, well, we still can